when Selena and Diane told me, would you come along and talk about design for change? Well, you can't design anything if you're not living and breathing. And the only way we live and breathe is by what we put in our mouths. So if you start to then give food a priority as a designer, you will become a better designer, but you will be totally immersed in design, because every time you open your mouth, you are creating ramifications of design. Not just the design of the food that you choose to put in your mouth, but the design of the landscape that you live in. Because every food decision is a design decision. So my simple question when I talk about this is, when you make that design decision, are you putting produce or product? So it comes down to a decision, a design decision of life and death. Am I putting living produce into this mouth, or am I putting dead packaged product? So when you do that, then you become an activist. Of course you're going to become an activist. You're going to get fired up because you're either fueling a healthy designer and a healthy place of design thinking, or you're fueling one that's on a road to nowhere, that's caught up in the business of consumption. Because all this plays out in a designed landscape. Think about the design that's around us. We talk about mimicking nature. That is the ultimate. We can do no better. And in doing that, you then can put down the design tools of war. Nature, us, humans, we take it on. We're fighting. We need to change that thinking. So really, there's 4 words that I want to talk about for the next 10 minutes. And the first one is thinking. The way we think creates the world around us. And as designers, our thinking has the potential to absorb and accumulate and gather from nature perfection. Now, perfection's a big word if I start throwing that around. Perfection. You're going to say, well, you think that's perfection. You might think it's not quite. But when it comes to nature as a system, it's been designed and it's been working for a long time. Anything we design is 1 day, 1 week, 6 months, 1 generation. It's not very old, it hasn't been proven. Industry best practice. As soon as someone says that to me, I'm arcing up. I'm immediately seeing smoke screens. Because from a design point of view, industry best practice is usually a smoke screen of, we'll just hide here. And it's industry best practice according to who and according to how long. Indigenous industry best practice is 40,000 years old. I might sort of start to go with that. But when we talk about some of these design decisions that are being made on the landscapes that are affecting our health, industry best practice of certain extractive industries, you've got to ask yourself, they've only been around for a very short period of time and they're making claims on our health that we need to be around. And as Selena said, we need to be active. Because if we are the designer, if we are a human designer, we need to look at ourselves as sanctuary. And I think that those choices, when we draw it back to the vocabulary behind those choices, we start to sieve the rubbish and get more to the truth. Think about the words that you say. Think about the structure of those words. There's a lot of battle, there's a lot of war, there's a lot of, we're fighting against this. We can push and we can push and we can push, or we can step around these things. And from a design point of view, when you look at a problem and take it on as a battle, There'll be a very different outcome to if you take it on as an entire project where you look at it non-confrontationally. And that thinking, for me, always comes back to food. The landscapes that we design in are nurturing our ability to design. But we're doing other things, because it's not just the food we put in our mouth. It's the other things that we put on our body that affect our ability to design. Someone designed this. They were given a brief, as Selena said, I'm not sure what was saying. You're given a brief. But they're not telling you the full story, because all the real information's hidden in there. But what's the point? The point is, life or death, that's giving out a message of death, because it's saying anti-perspire. We perspire because as a living system we need to vent toxins from our body, and antiperspirant blocks it. So that's how, as a designer, we can get intimately connected with environment, we can get intimately connected with issues because we make it personal. And we make it personal because we think about it, but we look at the vocabulary that we use, and we combine this to say, okay, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be responsible as a designer. And someone says, yeah, but I've got to make my money. I'll just sell out. Well, you have to live with that. And you also have to sit and think, well, what am I giving out to the broader environment, and what am I doing for people? So the opportunity exists to combine those three things with food and health at the top. And when you have that as the pinnacle, then your decisions will become clear. And you won't involve yourself in designing something like that. And then when you don't design something like that, well, guess what? If you don't design it, it's not bought. If it's not bought, it doesn't exist anymore, and it falls off the shelf. And it doesn't have to be. It's just your action, your day-to-day action. And the most exciting part about it for me, when it comes to this sort of thing, is it has to be emotional. We've got so much information these days. I can pick up any topic, labelling, container deposit schemes, food systems, whatever. You can hit one of 200,000 hits. But who's going to read all that? And what's going to be the point? As designers, we've got to take that little bit of information, and like that image that you put up of the petrol houses, that told a huge story. We are the biggest sphere of influence. And as a designer, when you put your world as priority, and you look at the things that you promote through your decisions, well then you ripple out to the rest of the world, and you can change the world by changing your decisions. And that to me is the most active, positive, proactive way that we can go about change. And we can do it every time we open our mouths, because we're designing the world. And it ties in perfectly with what Diane was talking about with systems, whether it's the water system, whether it's the food system, and designing that to be, next point, fourth point, local. Localised systems are the way to go. Local is simple, it's close, it's got character. When we talk about local regions, you go around Italy, you go to a local region, this is the best region for these things. They celebrate that. They celebrate what they do well. They design localness. And we can do it, and it's happening. The slides we looked at, the point is, I make a decision in my street on the corner of my house to plant a garden, I then start to influence the whole street. That action of putting a design process right in front of people where they live, it does not get more powerful. And for me, food is the most powerful thing. It's the one thing we all have in common. It's the one thing that we all do at least 5 times a day, and it's the one way that we can change and work with the world we live in. And for me, the way we achieve that is we have to talk here. We've got the information. We've got more than enough information. It's all been done. And it's being done. And I get excited about seeing slides of what you're doing because, you know, my task in my sphere of influence is to take these ideas, which I'm doing, and put it out to mainstream. Put it onto the TV and say to people, we can do this and we can do it right here, we can do it right now. And you as designers can make those systems work. But I say, take it and use this. Turn that information in there into something that connects here. And when you connect it there, that means you can come up with an image that cuts to the chase. People get it, they take it home and they act on it.
Why did these designers make really good agents for change? We are very good at, as creative thinkers and designers, of thinking around mainstream siloed solution delivery. And we do that by taking a whole systems approach. So rather than just saying, we have a problem here, we're trying to look at the cause, and so this whole systems approach of looking at everything and how it impacts, any change impacts on anything else. The other thing that designers and the people we produce here at COFA and at the university are good at prototyping and testing and modelling various solutions to see which ones work the best. And this is a photo from a talk we had a couple of months ago here at COFA from some designers from Belgium who have been travelling the world looking at design solutions to third world problems and realising that a colonialist approach to come in and say, hey, you're a third world country, we've got a first world solution for you, here it is, see you later, is not the best way to provide these solutions. And in fact, one of the design thinking methods, which is co-design and co-creation, is to work with the community for them to develop their own solution to their problems. The other thing that designers are really good at is, after prototyping, is communicating the vision. So this is a picture of a tap. There's a woman here in Spain and she's got tap water that she can drink and has access to readily any day of the week. And it shows the fact that the city has invested in putting this tap in, and the money that's paid for that tap provides a second tap on the other side of the world to a community that doesn't have access to fresh and clean water. Because designers are great at communicating and framing solutions and navigating needs into the final outcome, we're ideally placed to solve these kinds of wicked problems, but unfortunately we're not often invited to come to the table for that discussion. And there are multiple reasons for that, but it's often because we avoid, as an industry of creative people, putting ourselves out there and getting involved in technical, economic or financial or business kinds of discussions. And I think it's sad because design thinking can create some really wonderful solutions to issues in these realms.
We're not talking about the future anymore. The climate change is already here and we need to get serious about it and mitigate what we can now. Build adaptive solutions where possible, and the main thing is we need to build more resilient communities, and I think that design has a very integral role in all of those three aspects: mitigating, adapting and building more resilient communities. We did have 123 records broken over the summer. This is from the Climate Commission's report, Angry Summer. So it's a very interesting report, but this probably what we're getting better at doing right now is synthesising some of this data and then trying to communicate it. The first project I want to sort of talk to you about was the work I did at a place called the Victorian Eco Innovation Lab, and that was based at the University of Melbourne, but actually involved 4 universities, the design departments of 4 different universities, who would get together and sort of do this big think tank scenario stuff and then distribute the scenarios through to university students who would go around and work on these ideas throughout the semester. We would then sort of gather and curate all of the student ideas into an exhibition and take that back to the public. And the idea around that was really about trying to tell stories and to get people on board to understand that yes, we needed to change, but that change didn't necessarily need to be so different from what we knew now. One of the things that we did was start to use really familiar metaphors. So we lent a lot on what people already knew, but changed it in a different way to sort of talk about new values. But the idea of what design did was actually create the narratives, create a schematic of the idea which could be applied in many different local contexts. And could we get to the stage that we're taking over petrol stations and turning them into food depots? So how do we get there? And the second project I'd like to sort of talk to is the project I'm currently working on. And so after working on that kind of level of strategic work and visioning, I wanted to start to see change happen. It's called the Green Living Centre. It was formerly called the Watershed. And we are a jointly run project between two councils, and there's 3 full-time staffing positions there and casual positions. And for all of those that like a framework, we do have a bit of a design framework which is trying to take people through a sustainability journey of awareness, which is the idea of what's going on, enabling, which is really skills and knowledge development and sharing, creating community, so the social connections around that change, and then enabling the community to be independent so that it should be able to operate without the support of the GLC, but with the support of things like council grants. So from a design perspective, we've sort of been looking at, in food, prototyping a whole lot of different activities. And so, you know, we like to put modes on things and give them sort of forms. But this is some of the work that we've sort of really been doing in the last year or so, is sort of looking at how we can sort of prototype a whole lot of community activities, and it's research to sort of see who's out there, what sticks, who's interested in what. So one of the things that we've sort of really found from doing this is by normalising and activating, you start making these changes visible in the community, skills building and supporting creative R and DIY projects, and celebrating local knowledge, and that's how I think change starts to happen.